Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's word study titled Remembering Shabbat, that is, the Sabbath. And we cite here in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verses 8 through 11, where we read, "Earnestly remember the Shabbat day, to keep it Kodesh." Some say Kadash, some say Kodesh, some say Kadosh. I say Kodesh. But anyway, what that means is keep it dedicated. Kodesh means dedicated to Yahweh, your Elohim. So again, Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11, earnestly remember the Shabbat day, to keep it Kodesh, dedicated to Yahweh, your Elohim. Now we're going to look at what it means to remember the Shabbat day and what it means to keep it Kodesh, dedicated to Yahweh, our Elohim. It goes on after that little intro there in Exodus 20, verse 8 through 11. It continues saying, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Shabbat to Yahweh, your Elohim. In it you shall not do any work. Not you, not your son, not your daughter, not your servants or employees, not your working animals, and not any visitor who is within your gates. For in 6 days Yahweh made the Shamayim and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. That is why Yahweh, Baruch, blessed the Shabbat day, the Sabbath day, and made it Kodesh. That is to say, he made it dedicated to and for his purposes. So, there are 2 things Abba Father wants us to do concerning the Shabbat day. Number 1 is to remember it, and number 2 is to keep it Kodesh. So let's look at the odiote for these 2 things. First, we have remember, and that word in the Aramaic Hebrew is Zacher. Zacher. Strong's number H2142. It is spelled Zayin Kaf Resh. Zayin, picture of a plowing or digging tool, represents spiritual man living the Torah. Living the Torah brings freedom. It has to do with digging into the Word. And Zayin has to do with remembering the Shabbat day. Then we have Kaf, picture of an open palm. It has to do with taming and or subduing something. Generally here, talking about the flesh. Kaf has to do with the work of Yeshua. And it also has to do with the filling of the Ruach. And finally, we have Resh, picture of a man's head. Has to do with headship and thoughts, what your thoughts are on. So, to remember the Shabbat day means to spend that day digging into his word and living the Torah, meditating on his loving instructions to us. So always remember that Torah does not mean law. Think of it as the Father's loving instructions to his children. To remember the Shabbat day also means to tame and subdue the nature of our flesh, to fast or to abstain from things that are the desires of our flesh nature. And in so doing, we are increasing the filling of his Ruach in us. It's a day of making his thoughts our thoughts, and of remembering that Elohim is our headship, and also remembering the work of Yeshua, what he did for us in fulfilling all the points of the Shabbat as no one else could. Next, we have the Father's instruction to make the Shabbat day Kodesh. Now, generally in most Bibles you see the word holy. The original Aramaic Hebrew word there is Kodesh, and that is Strong's number H6942. It is spelled Kuf Dalet Shin. Kuf, picture of the sun at the horizon, light shining into the darkness, or conversely, light being swallowed up in the darkness. The sun rises, light shines on darkness. The sun sets, darkness engulfs the light. And of course, in this case, it's pointing at going back to the beginning where the sun rises in the east, Kadam. Kuf has to do with a cycle. Shabbat is a cycle. Cycles are Abba's ways of teaching us. Then we have Dalet, picture of a door. Yeshua is the door. Dalet has to do with movement in and out of this door from the physical to the spiritual coming into the physical. And Dalet has to do with the 4 dimensions of space and time. Then finally we have Shin, picture of 2 front teeth, has to do with cutting and separating. So, to keep the Shabbat day Kodesh means to remember it every 7th day and to dedicate that day to Abba Father, Yahweh, and of course his son Yeshua, and your indwelling Ruach, his indwelling Ruach HaKodesh, to make it a cycle of remembrance in our lives, as Abba Father intended it to be. Remember, things that are repetitive, presented to us in regular cycles, are the Father's way of teaching us and causing us to grow. I've talked about this in previous videos. It might have been East is East, West is West, where in the West, the way most of us were raised, we think in terms of, linear. We're walking along our path in life. There's a tree. We look at the tree. We walk past the tree. The tree is gone. Forget about the tree. It's no longer meaningful to us. That's not the way of Kadam, going back to the east where Abba Father's light shines the brightest, going back to his ways, like we do every week, looking at the Odiot, the mind of Mashiach, the mind of Yeshua, is not linear, it's cyclical. Abba Father is all about cycles. There's a tree. You walk past the tree. The Father brings you around. There's the tree again. And he brings you back. The tree. The tree. It's the same with Shabbat. 7 days, Shabbat. Go around. Oh, Shabbat again. Shabbat again. You keep going past that tree. You get familiar with the tree. Then you start seeing things about the tree you never saw before. And you start learning more about the tree or his word. This is what Shabbat is all about, to bring us back on a regular cycle so that we spend time with him, dedicating that day to Elohim. Every 7 days, a growth starts happening in us. This is not a law like you better do this or else. This is the Father's loving instructions to his children, teaching them how we grow in the Ruach. Shabbat is a day when, through meditation on his word and prayer time, we move from the physical realm into the spiritual realm of our lives. and the Father's spiritual realm invades our physical realm, and he's pitching his tent with us. We are pitching our tent with him. It's a day when we separate ourselves from the things of the world and focus on the things of Elohim. Now, for the big question, when does the seventh day happen? When do we exercise? When do we remember and keep Shabbat Kodesh? In my previous videos, I've always said that the Shabbat day is on Saturday, meaning primarily that Sunday, the general day of worship practiced by Christians, is not correct, pointing out that even by our calendars, which is the seventh day of the week, it's easy to see that the seventh day is Saturday, not Sunday. Now, 4 months ago, I made a video about Shabbat. And since then, as well as since then, I've been getting these people telling me, "Oh, Alan, you got it all wrong. The Shabbat goes according to the new moon. And you can't be using the Gregorian calendar. It's wicked, and so on and so forth." Well, I looked into it, and, at first I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense, I mean, the moon is an important marker in the heavens for all kinds of things. Maybe that's right. But no, there's a huge problem with calculating the Sabbath day, Shabbat, according to the new moon. What happens is, every month there's a new moon. And unlike, what your calendars will tell you, you might see on your calendar new moon, and it's usually a dark circle. That's not the new moon. That's actually the end of a lunar cycle. And a couple of days later, you'll see the first sliver of light. That is the new moon. But if you try and calculate Shabbat according to the new moon, every month prior to the new moon, sometimes there's 8 days, and sometimes there's 9 days, and then you would be starting the count for Shabbat again. And the Father said, "You work 6 days, and on the seventh day you rest, and you remember to keep Shabbat Kodesh." That is what the Word says. Now, if you go according to this new moon theory, you can't work 6 days and then rest. Sometimes there's 8 days, sometimes there's 9 days. Now you're going against the Father's Word. It doesn't make sense. I ain't buying it. So, and then there are other people that go, "Oh, it's not from sundown on Friday until sundown on Saturday. It's from sunup on Saturday until sunup on Sunday," or something like that. I don't know. Work it, work it however you want. The important thing is that you remember Shabbat, and that you remember to keep it Kodesh. That is the command from the Father that I hold on to. Personally, I go from sundown Friday night until sundown Saturday night. To me, that's Shabbat. And, I've always said throughout the years, every day is Shabbat to me. I mean, I remember Abba, Father, and every day to me is Kodesh to him. But, his command is that You work 6 days, and on the seventh day you remember to keep that day Kodesh to Elohim. And like I said, for me, the sun goes down Friday night, Shabbat, until I see the sun go down Saturday night. And there's others. Oh, you have to go according to Jerusalem, Israel. When does it go down? Pick. Works of the flesh, if you ask me. You can't be so nitpicky about this. You do it from your heart when it makes sense to you. What is the seventh day? I maintain the seventh day is Saturday. And whether you want to do it, from when you get up on Saturday till you go to bed on Saturday night, or from sundown on Friday night till sundown, whatever. The important thing is that you're remembering to take the seventh day and keep it Kodesh, dedicated. Everything you do that day is about pitching your tent with Elohim and seeking His revealing to you how He pitches His tent with you. Now, this is important. We do not work the Shabbat day. Now, I'm not saying we don't work on the Shabbat. Everybody knows that. But you don't work it. We remember it, and we keep it Kodesh. We don't fulfill it. Yeshua worked it because no one else could. Yeshua fulfilled it, not us. And again, we remember it, and we keep it Kodesh. But we don't work it out. If you want to work at performing the many commands concerning the Shabbat day, doing this, that, and the other thing, that's fine, as long as you are doing those things out of love for Elohim. On the other hand, if you're doing those things as if you're working out your own salvation, and only you can determine whether or not you're doing that. But if you are doing that, trying to work out your own salvation, then you are making a very, very large error in your life. You do not fulfill the Shabbat by turning it into laws, and I have to do this or the Father's going to be angry with me. That's the wrong approach. The only thing we're really commanded to do is to remember it and to make it Kodesh. That day is dedicated to Him, Abba Father, Yeshua, and Ruach HaKodesh. This is not a matter of law versus grace. It's a matter of obeying His commands. How do you let your Father know you love Him? Through obedience. Any parent will tell you that. A child can say, "Oh, I love you, Mommy, Daddy," all the time, and that's could be completely meaningless if they're disobedient children. But a child who obeys their father, that father knows that child loves him. It's a matter of obeying His commands, the Father's loving instructions to His children, pitching your tent with Elohim. His instructions are to remember it and make it Kodesh. Make that day dedicated to Him. Yeshua said in John chapter 14, verse 15, "If you really love me, you will obey my commands." So earnestly remember the Shabbat day and keep it Kodesh. That's our study for this week, my friends. As always, I hope and I pray that this information is a beracha to you and to yours. Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week. And until then, shalom, my friends. Yeah. Now 2,000 years have gone by, it's another working day.
Some would rather let it lie, but the question still remains.